The idea for the trip came to me during one of those quiet evenings when Ava and I were curled up on the couch, talking about everything and nothing. She mentioned how much she missed the snow, the mountains, and the quiet moments away from the hustle of city life. That's when I knew our 5-year anniversary needed to be something special, something unforgettable. I started planning that very night. Colorado seemed like the perfect destination. I envisioned us skiing down powdery slopes, taking long hikes in the crisp winter air, and ending the days by the fireplace in a cozy cabin. But most importantly, I pictured the moment when I would get down on one knee, surrounded by the breathtaking beauty of the Rockies, and ask Ava to be my wife. I spent weeks researching the best places to stay, making sure everything was perfect. I booked a private cabin near Aspen, away from the crowds, where we could have our own little world for a week. I even arranged for a surprise sleigh ride under the stars on our final night, which is when I planned to propose. I had the ring custom made, a simple, elegant design with a diamond that caught the light just right. It was everything Ava had ever wanted, and I couldn't wait to see the look on her face. I decided to keep the entire trip a secret, telling Ava only that we were going somewhere special. I knew how much she loved surprises, and I was thrilled at the thought of her delight when she finally realized what I had planned. The night before we were set to leave, I couldn't contain my excitement any longer. As we were finishing dinner, I hinted at the trip. Ava, you're going to love this anniversary trip. I've got something really special planned, I said, grinning as I poured us both a glass of wine. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. Oh, can I get a hint? Nope, I replied, leaning back in my chair. You'll just have to wait and see. But trust me, it's going to be unforgettable. She laughed, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. I'm sure it will be. You always know how to make things special. Hearing her say that made me even more confident that I was making the right choice. This trip would be the start of our future together, the moment that would cement our bond forever. As I watched her that night, talking animatedly about her day and how much she was looking forward to our adventure, I felt a warmth in my chest. I was nervous about proposing, sure, but more than that, I was excited. I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with Ava, and I was certain she felt the same way. Everything was falling into place. That night, after Ava went to bed, I stayed up a little longer, just to check my plans one last time. The itinerary, the reservations, the ring, it was all perfect. I placed the ring box carefully in my suitcase, hidden beneath layers of clothes, and took a deep breath. This is it, I whispered to myself. This is the beginning of the rest of our lives. Little did I know, things wouldn't go as planned. The next day would bring a surprise of its own, one I wasn't prepared for. But in that moment, everything felt right, and I allowed myself to savor the anticipation of what I hoped would be the most memorable week of our lives. The morning of our departure started off just as I had envisioned. The sky was a crisp, clear blue, the kind that promised a beautiful day ahead. I could hardly contain my excitement as I loaded our bags into the car, double-checking that everything was in place. The ring was safely tucked away, and our travel plans were all set. Ava seemed just as eager, humming a tune as she grabbed her coat. As we drove to the airport, I kept the destination a secret, reveling in the way Ava's curiosity built with every mile. Come on, just tell me already, she pleaded with a grin, glancing at me from the passenger seat. Is it somewhere warm? Somewhere cold? Do I need a swimsuit? I chuckled, shaking my head. Nope, not telling. But I will say this, you're going to love it. Her laughter filled the car, and I felt a surge of happiness. Everything was going according to plan. We arrived at the airport with plenty of time to spare. I guided her toward the check-in counter, where I finally revealed our destination. Colorado. Ava exclaimed, her eyes widening with surprise. We're going to Colorado. I nodded, smiling as I watched her reaction. I remember you saying how much you missed the mountains and the snow. I thought it would be the perfect place for us to celebrate. She threw her arms around me, pulling me into a tight hug. "You're amazing. I can't believe you planned this all on your own." Her enthusiasm was contagious, and I felt a sense of pride that I had managed to surprise her. We checked in, made our way through security, and finally settled into our seats on the plane. Everything was going smoothly, until Ava pulled out her phone. "I should let the girls know we're heading to Colorado," she said casually, typing out a message. I frowned slightly, not thinking much of it at the time. "Your friends?" "Yeah, they've been dying to know where we were going," she explained, still focused on her screen. "They're going to freak out when they hear it's Colorado." I smiled, imagining how excited Ava's friends would be for her. They were close, almost too close at times. But I knew they meant a lot to her. I just hoped they wouldn't try to call or text too much during our trip. This was supposed to be our time, after all. A few moments later, Ava's phone buzzed with a flurry of responses. She laughed, holding up the screen for me to see. "Look, they're all so jealous. Molly's been wanting to go to Colorado forever." I nodded, but something in her tone made me feel uneasy. Before I could dwell on it, the flight attendant announced that we were about to take off, and we settled in for the flight. The journey to Colorado was uneventful, and I found myself relaxing again. By the time we landed and picked up our rental car, I was back in high spirits, eager to get to the cabin and start our vacation. As we drove toward Aspen, I couldn't help but glance over at Ava, who was smiling at her phone. She seemed unusually preoccupied, texting back and forth with someone. "Who's got you so busy?" I asked with a lighthearted tone. She looked up, a bit startled, as if she had forgotten I was there. "Oh, it's just Molly and the girls. They're so excited for us." "Excited for us?" I repeated, a hint of curiosity in my voice. Ava hesitated, then flashed me a quick smile. "Yeah, they were just saying how great it would be if they could join us. You know, make it a group trip." My heart sank, and I felt a knot form in my stomach. This was not part of the plan. "Wait, what do you mean?" "Well," Ava began, her tone cautious, "I sort of mentioned that we were going to Colorado, and Molly said she and the girls would love to come along. I didn't think you'd mind." "Ava, I planned this trip for us," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just the two of us." "I know, and it's so sweet of you," she replied, reaching over to touch my arm. "But wouldn't it be fun to have them around? We could all hang out together, and they've already booked their flights and a place nearby. It'll be like a mini vacation with friends." I pulled the car over to the side of the road, needing a moment to process what she was saying. The perfect romantic getaway I had envisioned was slipping through my fingers. "Ava, this was supposed to be our trip. Just us. I planned everything so we could spend time together, alone." She looked at me with wide eyes, her smile fading. "I didn't mean to mess things up. I just thought it would be fun. We can still have our time together, I promise. It's just, they're really excited." I took a deep breath, trying to suppress my frustration. "So, they're coming, no matter what?" Ava bit her lip, then nodded. "Yeah. I mean, they're already on their way." I stared out the windshield, feeling a wave of disappointment wash over me. This was not how I wanted things to go. I had been looking forward to this trip for weeks, to the quiet moments we'd share, to the proposal. And now, everything felt different. "Ava, I wish you had talked to me before inviting them," I said finally, my voice tinged with frustration. "This trip was supposed to be special." She sighed, looking genuinely sorry. "I didn't mean to upset you. I just thought it would be nice to have them along. We can still have our time, just us. Please don't be mad." I didn't know what else to say. The trip was already happening, and there was no way to change it now. I forced a smile, though it didn't reach my eyes. "Let's just get to the cabin." As I started driving again, I couldn't shake the feeling that something important had been lost. The excitement I had felt was gone, replaced by a growing sense of unease. This was not the trip I had planned, and I couldn't help but wonder how the rest of it would unfold. The drive to the cabin felt longer than it should have. The once beautiful scenery of snow-covered trees and distant mountain peaks passed by unnoticed as I replayed Ava's words in my head. Her friends were on their way, and there was nothing I could do about it. The romantic getaway I had meticulously planned was about to be turned into a group vacation, one that I hadn't signed up for. When we finally arrived at the cabin, the first thing I noticed was how perfect it was. Nestled at the edge of a pine forest, the log cabin had a cozy, rustic charm with a stone chimney and a wraparound porch. The snow was pristine, untouched, and everything seemed to be right out of a winter postcard. But as beautiful as it was, I couldn't shake the disappointment that had settled in my chest. Iva was buzzing with excitement as we unloaded the car. "This place is amazing. I can't wait to show the girls." I forced a smile, trying to match her enthusiasm. "Yeah, it's really nice." She didn't seem to notice my lack of enthusiasm. Instead, she was already busy taking photos of the cabin and the surrounding landscape, sending them off to her friends with captions like, "Can't wait for you to get here." "And this place is incredible." I tried to push down the frustration and focus on enjoying the time we had before they arrived. But it was hard. Every time I looked at the cabin, all I could think about was how different this trip was going to be from what I had planned. We spent the afternoon settling in. I lit a fire in the stone fireplace, and Ava made us hot chocolate, complete with marshmallows. For a brief moment, as we sat on the couch together, sipping our drinks and watching the flames dance, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe things wouldn't be so bad after all. Maybe we could still find time for just the two of us. But that moment was short-lived. Ava's phone buzzed, and she immediately grabbed it, her face lighting up as she read the message. "They just landed," she announced, looking up at me with excitement. "They'll be here in a couple of hours." I set my mug down, the warmth of the fire doing little to ease the cold feeling in my gut. "Ava, I really think we should talk about this." She looked at me, her smile faltering slightly. "What's there to talk about?" "This was supposed to be our trip," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I was really looking forward to spending time with you, just the two of us. Now, it feels like I'm going to be the odd one out." Ava frowned, her brow furrowing. "You're not the odd one out. We're all friends, and I thought it would be fun to have everyone together. It's just a few days. We can still have our moments." "I don't know, Ava," I replied, rubbing the back of my neck. "It's hard to feel special or close when there are other people around. I wanted this to be about us." She sighed, setting her mug on the coffee table. "I didn't realize this meant so much to you. I just thought we could all have a good time together." I looked into her eyes, trying to make her understand. It did mean a lot to me. I've been planning this for weeks, thinking about how we could make some really special memories together. But now, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to be competing for your attention." Ava reached out, taking my hand. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I just didn't want to leave them out." I squeezed her hand, appreciating the sentiment, but it didn't change how I felt. "I get that, but it's not the same. I wanted to focus on us, on our relationship. With them here, it's just different." Before Ava could respond, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, biting her lip. "They're almost here," she said, looking back at me. "Can we talk more about this later? I don't want to start the trip on a bad note." I nodded, feeling the conversation slipping away. "Sure. Later." But deep down, I knew that later might never come. Once her friends arrived, it would be all about them, their plans, their jokes, their stories. I could already see myself being pushed to the background, an afterthought in what was supposed to be my own romantic getaway. When Molly and the others finally arrived, the cabin was filled with their laughter and chatter. They brought with them an energy that was infectious, and Ava seemed to come alive in their presence. She was laughing, joking and immediately diving into plans for the next few days. Plans that seemed to have little room for the quiet, intimate moments I had envisioned. As the evening wore on, I found myself feeling more and more like an outsider. They had inside jokes, shared memories, and a bond that I simply wasn't part of. Every time I tried to join the conversation, it felt forced, like I was intruding on something private. At one point, Molly turned to Ava, grinning. "So, what's the plan for tomorrow? We should hit the slopes early, right?" Ava nodded eagerly. "Definitely. We can grab breakfast at that cute little cafe we passed on the way here, and then spend the whole day skiing." I cleared my throat, trying to insert myself into the conversation. "Actually, I was thinking maybe Ava and I could take a walk around the lake in the morning. It's supposed to be really beautiful." Molly looked at me, surprised, as if she had forgotten I was there. "Oh, that sounds nice. Maybe we can all go together." I forced a smile, but inside, I felt another piece of my plan crumble. "Sure, that could work." Ava gave me an apologetic look, but quickly turned her attention back to her friends, who were already making more plans for the next day. As the evening wore on, I found myself retreating into the background, my presence barely acknowledged. By the time everyone was ready for bed, I felt drained, both physically and emotionally. Ava and I retreated to our room, but instead of the quiet intimacy I had hoped for, the walls felt thin, filled with the echoes of her friends' laughter from the other rooms. As we got into bed, I turned to Ava, hoping for some reassurance. "Are you happy with how things turned out?" She looked at me, surprised by the question. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" I sighed, staring up at the ceiling. "I just feel like I'm barely part of this trip. It's like I'm just there." Ava rolled over, resting her head on my chest. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to be like this. I thought we could all have fun together." I wrapped my arm around her, trying to hold on to the closeness we had left. "I just hope we can still find time for us." "We will," she promised, but I could hear the tiredness in her voice, the way she was already drifting off to sleep. As I lay there, listening to her breathing slow, I couldn't shake the feeling of being a third wheel on my own vacation. The proposal that had once seemed so perfect now felt like a distant dream, overshadowed by the reality of a trip that was no longer mine. I tried to push the thoughts away, but they lingered, settling into the pit of my stomach like a stone. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the room. I woke up with a sense of determination, clinging to the hope that today could still be salvaged. Despite everything, I wanted to believe that Ava and I could find a moment to reconnect, to reclaim some part of the romantic getaway I had envisioned. But as soon as I stepped out of the bedroom, that hope began to wane. The living room was already alive with activity. Molly and the others were huddled around the kitchen island, sipping coffee and planning the day. Ava was right in the middle of it, laughing and chatting as if nothing had changed. I walked over, trying to ease into the conversation. "Morning, everyone. So, what's the plan for today?" Molly grinned at me, her energy infectious. "We're heading out to the slopes as soon as we finish breakfast. It's going to be an epic day of skiing." Ava turned to me, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I hope you're ready to hit the slopes too. It's going to be so much fun." I forced a smile, trying to match her enthusiasm. "Actually, I was thinking we could start the day with that walk around the lake I mentioned last night. Just the two of us." Ava hesitated, glancing at her friends. "Oh, I forgot about that. But the slopes..." Molly cut in before she could finish. "Come on, Ava, the walk can wait. We got fresh powder and perfect weather. You don't want to miss this." I felt a knot tighten in my chest. This was exactly what I had feared. Being pushed aside, my plans dismissed as less important. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Ava, I really wanted us to have some time alone today. We haven't had a chance to really be together since we got here." Ava's smile faltered, and she looked at me with a mixture of guilt and frustration. I know, but everyone's so excited about skiing. We can do the walk later, I promise. My patience, already thin, began to wear through. You keep saying that, but it never happens. I'm starting to feel like I don't matter on this trip. The room grew quiet, the cheerful buzz of conversation fading as everyone turned to look at us. Ava's face flushed, a mix of embarrassment and anger flashing in her eyes. That's not fair, and you know it. I'm trying to make sure everyone has a good time, including you. I shook my head, the frustration boiling over. No, Ava, you're trying to make sure they have a good time. I'm just here. This was supposed to be our trip, and now it feels like I'm the last person you care about. Ava stepped closer, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? We're all here to have fun. Can't you just go with the flow for once? I met her gaze, my own voice tinged with a sadness I couldn't hide. I've been going with the flow since we got here. But I didn't plan this trip to be just another one of your group hangouts. I planned it for us, for you and me. And now, I feel like I've lost that. Ava opened her mouth to respond, but Molly interjected, her tone sharp. Maybe you're the one ruining this trip. We're all trying to have a good time, and you're just bringing everyone down. That was the breaking point. I felt something snap inside me, the last shred of patience giving way to a flood of anger and hurt. You know what? I'm done. I didn't come here to fight with you, or to be made to feel like I don't belong. I'm leaving. Ava's eyes widened in shock. What? You can't just leave. Watch me, I said, my voice cold and final. This was supposed to be our time, and if that's not going to happen, then there's no reason for me to stay. I turned on my heel and stormed back to the bedroom, my mind made up. As I packed my bag, I heard Ava following me, her voice pleading. Please, don't do this. We can fix it. Let's just go skiing and try to have fun. I didn't look at her as I zipped up my bag. I've tried, Ava. I've really tried. But it's clear that I'm not what you care about right now. And I'm not going to stick around and be treated like I don't matter. Ava reached out, grabbing my arm. You do matter. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't think it would turn out like this. I pulled my arm away, finally meeting her eyes. Neither did I. But this isn't the first time you've chosen them over me. And I'm starting to realize that maybe it's time I stop waiting for you to change. Her expression crumbled, tears welling up in her eyes. Please, don't go. Let's talk about this. We can figure it out. I shook my head, my resolve firm. I need to go, Ava. I need some space to think. And honestly, I don't think there's anything left to figure out. Without another word, I slung my bag over my shoulder and walked out, leaving her standing there, tears streaming down her face. As I stepped outside, the cold mountain air hit me, but it didn't numb the pain of what had just happened. I climbed into the car, the engine roaring to life, and as I drove away from the cabin, I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and sorrow. The relief came from finally standing up for myself, for refusing to be sidelined any longer. But the sorrow that came from the realization that the relationship I had once cherished was now falling apart, and there was no turning back. The drive back home was a blur of snow-covered roads and icy silence. The once beautiful scenery of Colorado now felt like a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside me. I was grateful for the solitude, a chance to sort through the mess of emotions and thoughts swirling in my mind. Arriving back at my apartment felt like a small, quiet victory. I hadn't realized how much I needed this space until I was alone in it again. I dropped my bags and collapsed onto the couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. My phone buzzed with messages, mostly from Ava, but I ignored them. I needed to focus on my thoughts, not get caught up in a whirlwind of emotions and arguments. I considered calling my best friend, Jake, who had always been a good sounding board, but I decided to write down my feelings first. As I scribbled in my journal, trying to clarify my thoughts, I heard a knock at the door. It was Jake. I had texted him earlier, letting him know I was back early, and he had come over to check on me. "Hey man," Jake said, stepping inside with a concerned look. "How are you holding up?" I motioned for him to sit down. "Not great, honestly. It's been a rough couple of days." Jake sat on the couch across from me. "I can imagine. You want to talk about it?" I nodded, trying to find the right words. "So the trip was supposed to be this special anniversary getaway, right? I planned everything, sought out the perfect spot, activities, even had a proposal in mind. But then Ava invited her friends. I tried to make the best of it, but it felt like I was constantly pushed aside." Jake frowned. "That sounds tough. It's like she didn't respect what the trip was supposed to be." "Exactly," I said, my voice thick with frustration. I told her I wanted some alone time. Instead, I ended up feeling like a third wheel. And when I confronted her, it just turned into a fight. Jake sighed. "And what did you decide to do?" "I left," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't take it anymore. I came home, and now I'm trying to figure out if there's anything left to salvage." Jake leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "It sounds like you've already made up your mind about the relationship. What's holding you back?" I shook my head, feeling the weight of my decision. "It's not just about this trip. It's about how she's always chosen her friends over me. I've tried to ignore it, but this trip was the last straw. I keep thinking that maybe if I just wait, things will get better. But you've been waiting for years," Jake finished for me. "And nothing has changed." "Yeah," I agreed, feeling a lump in my throat. "I'm tired of waiting for her to prioritize me. I want someone who sees the value in our relationship and doesn't treat it as secondary to everything else." Jake nodded, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You deserve that. It's not wrong to want to be a priority in your own relationship." I took a deep breath, finally finding the clarity I needed. "I think I need to end things with Ava. I've tried talking to her, but she's always quick to defend her friends and dismiss my feelings. It's clear that I'm not the priority, and I don't want to keep hoping for something that might never change." Jake gave me an encouraging smile. "That sounds like a tough but necessary decision. It's important to take care of yourself, and sometimes that means making hard choices." I nodded, feeling a mix of sadness and resolve. "I've already packed up my things and arranged to stay with you for a while. I'll tell Ava when she gets home, but I need to make sure I'm clear about why this is happening." Jake stood up and clapped me on the back. "I'm here for you, man. If you need anything or just want to talk more, I'm always around." I gave him a grateful smile. "Thanks, Jake. I really appreciate it." As Jake left, I sat back down, staring at the journal in my lap. The decision was made, and while it was heart-wrenching, it felt like the right step toward reclaiming my own happiness. I knew there would be difficult conversations ahead, but for now, I needed to focus on moving forward. A few hours later, Ava's call finally came through. I answered, my voice steady but tinged with sadness. "Hi, Ava. Why didn't you answer my calls?" she asked, her tone a mix of frustration and concern. "I needed some time to think," I said calmly, "and I've made a decision. We need to talk." "About what?" Ava's voice wavered. "Can't we just talk about what happened on the trip?" I took a deep breath, my mind clear now. "We can talk about it, but it's more than just the trip. It's about our whole relationship, and I think it's time we faced the truth about where we stand." There was a long pause before she replied, "Okay, let's talk." As I hung up, I felt a strange sense of peace. The decision was made, and I was ready to face the difficult conversation ahead. This was the first step toward moving on, and despite the pain, it felt like a necessary one. After driving back home from the Colorado trip, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The drive had given me time to reflect on everything that had happened. I knew the decision to end my relationship with Ava wasn't something I could delay any longer. When I finally pulled into the driveway, I felt a heavy weight settle in my chest. This was going to be one of the hardest conversations of my life. As I walked through the front door, I was greeted by an uneasy silence. Ava was already there, pacing back and forth in the living room. Her eyes met mine, filled with a mix of worry and determination. She took a deep breath, her voice shaking slightly. "We need to talk." I nodded, my own voice steady but resolute. "Yeah, we do." We sat down on the couch, facing each other. Ava fidgeted with her hands, clearly struggling to find the right words. "I'm really sorry about how the trip turned out. I didn't realize it would be so bad." I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Ava, this isn't just about the trip. It's about how you consistently put your friends ahead of our relationship. You've done it before, and I thought this trip would be different. But it wasn't." Ava's face flushed with a mix of frustration and sadness. "I get that you're upset. I really do. But you're making it seem like I don't care about you. And that's not true." "I'm not saying you don't care," I replied, trying to keep my tone measured. "But it feels like you only care on your terms. You promised me we'd have time together, just us. Instead, I felt like a third wheel on a trip that was supposed to be about us." Ava's eyes welled up with tears. "I know I made a mistake. I should have listened to you more. But I wanted my friends to be part of it because they're important to me. It's just, I thought we could balance both." I shook my head, my frustration resurfacing. "It's not about balancing, Ava. It's about priorities. When it comes down to it, I always come second to your friends. This was supposed to be a special moment for us, and it turned into another example of how I'm not a priority." Ava reached out, her voice breaking. "I'm trying to understand where you're coming from, but this isn't just about a trip. It's about everything. You're making it seem like I've been ignoring you for the entire relationship." I looked at her, feeling a pang of sadness. "It's not just about the trip, Ava. It's about a pattern of behavior that's been there for a long time. I've tried to be patient and understanding, but I can't keep putting my needs aside just to accommodate everyone else." Ava's voice grew desperate. "I don't want to lose you. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm willing to change. I'll even go to therapy if it means we can work things out." I sighed, feeling a mix of sympathy and resolve. "I appreciate that you're willing to make changes, but I can't ignore how often this has happened. I need to think about what's best for me too." Ava's eyes searched mine, pleading. "Please, don't do this. We can figure it out. Let's try counseling or something before making any final decisions." I felt a lump in my throat as I spoke. "I've thought this through, Ava. I need to take care of myself and my own happiness right now. I don't think staying in this relationship is going to lead to what either of us wants." Ava's shoulders slumped, and she let out a shaky breath. "So, this is it? You're just going to walk away?" I nodded, feeling a deep sense of finality. "I think it's for the best. I need to move on and focus on my own well-being." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of what had been said. Ava sat there, tears streaming down her face, while I felt the sting of my own decision. We both knew there was no easy way to end this chapter, but it was clear that we needed to go our separate ways. As I stood up to leave, Ava's voice broke through the silence one last time. "I hope you find what you're looking for." I turned to look at her, my own voice soft but firm. "I hope you do too, Ava. Goodbye." With that, I walked out of the room, leaving behind the echoes of a relationship that had once held so much promise. The days following my breakup with Ava were filled with a mix of relief and sadness. The decision to end the relationship had been difficult, but it felt like the right choice for my own well-being. I had moved my things into my friend Jake's apartment while I figured out my next steps. It was a small space, but it offered me the solitude I needed to process everything and start anew. One morning, as I sipped my coffee and stared out the window at the city skyline, Jake plopped down on the couch next to me, his expression a blend of concern and curiosity. "How are you holding up, man? I know things have been rough." I shrugged, trying to keep a positive outlook. "I'm doing okay. It's just weird being in a new place and dealing with all this change. I'm trying to figure out what's next." Jake nodded, offering a sympathetic smile. "Change is always tough, but it sounds like you made the right call. Sometimes you need to shake things up to find out what you really want." Later that day, I decided to take a walk through a nearby park, hoping that some fresh air and movement would help clear my mind. As I strolled along the winding paths, I couldn't help but reflect on my past with Ava. The memories of our time together were bittersweet, filled with moments of joy but also marred by the recurring issues that had ultimately led to our breakup. While lost in thought, I bumped into my old college buddy, Matt, who was jogging through the park. He stopped, looking pleasantly surprised. "Hey, it's been a while. How's everything going?" I managed to smile, appreciating the unexpected encounter. "Hey, Matt. It's been a tough few days, actually. I just went through a breakup, and I'm trying to figure out my next move." Matt's expression softened with understanding. "I'm sorry to hear that, man. Breakups are never easy. If you need to talk or just hang out, let me know. Sometimes it helps to catch up with old friends." I nodded gratefully. "Thanks. I might take you up on that. I could use some company." Back at Jake's apartment, I found myself staring at a box of old memorabilia, photos, letters, and mementos from my relationship with Ava. As I sifted through the items, I couldn't help but feel a mix of nostalgia and resolve. The memories were important, but they were also a reminder of why I needed to move forward. Jake noticed me going through the box and came over to offer his support. "You okay? You look like you're going through a lot." I sighed, placing a photo of Ava and me on the coffee table. "Yeah, just sorting through some stuff. It's weird to look back and realize how much things have changed." Jake sat down beside me, offering a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "It's part of the process. You're allowed to feel sad and reflective. Just remember that moving forward is about finding new opportunities and focusing on what makes you happy." A few days later, I decided to take Jake's advice and start focusing on new opportunities. I began exploring career options, updating my resume, and looking into new hobbies that I had always wanted to try. One evening, while researching local community classes, I stumbled upon a course in creative writing. It struck a chord with me. I had always enjoyed writing, but had never pursued it seriously. I signed up for the class, and to my surprise, found that it provided a sense of purpose and fulfillment. As I worked on my writing assignments and engaged with other aspiring writers, I started to feel a renewed sense of direction. The creative outlet was helping me process my emotions and rebuild my confidence. One evening after class, I met up with Matt for coffee. We chatted about life, our careers, and the future. Matt leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "So, how's the writing going?" I grinned, feeling a genuine sense of excitement. "It's going really well. I didn't expect to enjoy it so much, but it's been a great way to channel my feelings and focus on something positive." Matt nodded, clearly pleased for me. "That's awesome. Sometimes, the best way to move forward is to find new passions and goals. It sounds like you're on the right track." As I left the cafe, I felt a sense of optimism about the future. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was moving towards something that truly mattered to me. The end of my relationship with Ava had been painful, but it had also opened up new possibilities for growth and self-discovery. In the weeks that followed, I continued to embrace the changes in my life. I stayed focused on my writing, reconnected with friends, and began to envision a future that was not defined by my past, but shaped by my new aspirations. It wasn't easy, but I was learning to navigate the path forward with hope and resilience. As I reflected on everything that had happened, I realized that sometimes the end of one chapter is simply the beginning of another. And while the future was still unfolding, I was ready to face it with a renewed sense of purpose and determination.